Welcome to Teen Art Studio Drawing Negative Space. So today we're focusing on not the objects themselves that we're drawing, but the space around it. And we're going to complete it to make a nice finished composition. And I'm going to show you how to do that right now. What you see before you are some materials. We first have an eraser. You want to use an eraser that you can get a nice line out of, because we are going to be drawing with our erasers. We're not going to be use it necessarily as it typically would be used to erase things on your paper. We're going to use it to actually make the line. I have another eraser in here that I kind of keep taking parts of to use to use it in little areas. I have a graphite stick. You don't necessarily need one, but this is what I use to get this nice background mid-tone. And then we've got an HB pencil and a 4B pencil. The 4B is the darker of the two. The HB is kind of acts like a number 2 pencil. If you only have a number 2 pencil, that's fine. You can still achieve this project. And we also have an art stump. This can be made, if you wanted to at home, this can be made with using regular white even copy paper rolled up. This is going to help to blend some of our gradients. And of course you have a sharpener, because you're going to need that toward the end of the project. All right, let's get started. So I went around my house and I looked for some objects that I thought would be fun. So you'll see this still life set up with these tools. It's important to, when you do still life, to not do something that you can get bored of really quickly, because it can be a little monotonous. So I thought these tools had great, interesting volume to them. They're half black, half silver, so that would be really nice with our graphite or our pencils. And if you see, I set up the objects so that they're kind of overlaying one another, because the intersecting lines with when it comes to drawing negative space are really important. That's really where you can start to understand the shape of everything. So in order to make sure that I have my objects in proportion, I'm going to start to lay in some of the heights and widths of these tools. So you see right now that I'm drawing with my eraser. I'm kind of sculpting actually. And I'm just marking in where I need to start and stop. So right now I got the bottom of the hammer, the bottom of the hammer, and the top of the hammer, that curve right there. The screwdriver kind of comes out a little bit farther than the edge, so I'm going to mark that in. It starts here and it ends here. I think we'll have to determine that eventually, but I'm going to make that line. And you're going to constantly want to wipe away your eraser shavings here, because you'll get really confused really quickly. And this guy is right here. So rather than using a pencil, I'm using my eraser. When this is all done, you will see how this part is probably the most important part. You don't want to get started on any of your objects until you know that they're proportionally correct. So I'm just being super vague right now. While keeping in mind the objects that are connecting to one another, or overlapping. So already I know I'm a little bit off with the wrench. So I'm gonna work back into that eventually, but right now we're just gonna get going. Okay, so right now I've got my eraser in my hand. I'm gonna switch over to my 4B, and I'm just gonna lay in those intersecting lines. Right now, nothing, look at this as nothing is an object. You're just focusing on the backgrounds, not the objects themselves. So you're looking at what is happening behind these objects. That's what's most important to me right now at the moment. And I will re-solidify these lines once I know that they're very accurate. Right now, I don't know. I'm just guessing while looking. And that's okay. That's the fun part of this. If you wanted to erase some of your lines on here, some of your eraser lines, you simply go over it with the existing graphite that's on your paper or pencil marks on your paper, and you go over it with your finger. So you can kind of start to see this coming together a little bit. See, already I'm noticing I'm a little off. That's okay. I'm gonna just go back in there, and basically I'm just outlining the outermost edges of my tools. Okay. So I'm gonna come up here. I know that the ridge kind of comes out. I think it actually comes out a little bit more up here. So that means my pliers are a little off, so I gotta correct that, but I'm just gonna keep trucking. It's really easy to get carried away with line. Oopsie, I just went in there. I'm not supposed to do that. Just going completely around the object itself, not paying attention to what's going on the inside. It is so easy to get distracted and do that because that's how we typically draw. This is kind of against the grain. We're having to look at things in their reverse. So I did notice another area that I gotta fix right there. Okay. And I'm just looking at the angles of a lot of this. It really is all about the angles and the intersections. And then making the corrections all in the meanwhile. Okay. And I'm using the lines created before that I erased as a guide to help me along this process, because again, it can be a little tricky. Your mind can play some really funny games with you because we're looking at the opposite. We're looking at the inverse rather than the positive. All right, looks like we're finishing up this portion of it. So what I'm gonna do now is reinforce my erased lines because I kind of went over them again or made corrections as I went through. So I'm gonna clean them up really nice. And then we're gonna go in and use our pencils to get a little more defined and complete our composition. So now we're allowed to go in. We're allowed to really take advantage of what we've been wanting to do this whole time. And start to make some really good defined details and finish our piece. Right now I'm using the 4Bs because I want to get all my blacks in, all my black colors in, so that I know where to go with my other tones, my other grays. So similar to last week, you can use those same techniques of cross-hatching, hatching, stippling. Stippling's really used more for pens, but you can try it with this. Any kind of texture that you make to really get that dark gradient in is what you want. So we're gonna use this as a scale, this darkest color as a scale to learn how to go a little bit lighter with some of the gray objects or mid-tone objects. Okay, not trying to be too perfect here. Just want to identify the darks. So right here, we came to a good point of where this kind of all intersects and how things are overlapped with one another. So this overlaps this, my pliers. And that's important because I need to know that from when I'm indicating my darks. Almost there. Okay, now using my trusty hand, I'm going to really just kind of smooth out what I did. We can always clean it later. Sorry for the shaking of the camera. This is kind of a rigorous sort of activity. So now I'm gonna go in with my blending tool or my stub. You can kind of see it makes lines on its own, drawing from the existing graphite that's on here. And I'm gonna just go ahead and get started. Marking in those darks. Not super dark, but almost dark. So that, for example. Go back in with this. Sometimes you have to kind of switch back and forth. You need to constantly reapply your pencil marks because they get lost. And if you notice, I'm making a big mess, so just be careful. The more my hand goes over the rest of the image, the more likely it's gonna mess up. So we just wanna make sure that we're mindful of where our hand is. Now I'm getting to the fun part where I'm kind of putting in some of those harsh lines. And I can really go on and on. I'm probably gonna continue to work on this after, just to really get defined for the sake of this video. I'm gonna kind of speed it up a little bit, but I hope you got the gist of it. Okay, now for me, for my final step, I'm gonna go in, make a mid-tone. That's kind of an in-between your darks and lights. And then I'm gonna use my eraser. Actually, I'm gonna pick apart this eraser a little bit, get to that white area, that nice curve there, and then mark in my extreme highlights. In order to get the highlight, you gotta kind of put some pencil on there first. All right. I think we're just about there to finish up this lesson. Again, I'm going to go back in and make sure that everything looks nice and tidy. This is a great portfolio piece. And again, you can do this all with the things that you have at home. So just make sure you put the time in and the dedication, and you can totally chip away at this. But it's really important to use still life objects that you're looking at. Your portfolio reviewer will know if you didn't. So work from life, always when practicing drawing. And I hope you all have a great week. Looking forward to seeing you next week. And take care.